Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today we are finally going to take a look at all of the work that finished in the month of March. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for the support, it is truly appreciated, and if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So each month I like to put together a video that takes a look at all of the work that is kicking off, as well as finishing each month, just to keep us all more informed as to what work is going on in the background. Now before we get to that, just because a feature on the progress tracker has work beginning or completing in a particular month, does not necessarily mean that it will release that quarter, the next quarter, or even in that year, as there could still be more work required from other teams, for example the downstream teams like audio, visual effects and so on. Or even priorities can shift and it can get pushed back until it is needed. It is, however, a great guide to see what could potentially come to the persistent universe when, but at the very least, it shows us what work is being done at what time in the year. So with that said, let us take a look at all of the work that came to an end in the month of March according to the progress tracker. And I apologise, this video is very late. So first up, we have the Arena Commander Classic Race Overhaul, which is bringing Arena Commander and all of its game modes to the current standard with all of the most recent tech. And this will mean improvements to scoring, reworking the racetracks, as well as implementing new racetracks, and a complete refactor to the checkpoint entity and race manager system. Now I have not really played on Arena Commander in such a long time, but I do hope that this will bring me back in, especially once they implement the ground vehicle racing. So a nice addition that will certainly be appreciated by many of the community, and this had 36 weeks work, which came to a close mid-March. Now this next feature is one that I'm actually very excited for, and it is called Charge Drain Tier 0. And this deliverable states all back-end tech tasks related to creating the first pass of the charge and drain power feature that will be used in future locations and mission updates. Now what this means is that any item that uses a battery, like a multi-tool or a weapon that has an energy-based magazine capacity, will need to be charged back up or replaced. Now this will have a big impact on many areas of gameplay, for example requiring a lot more thought when using the multi-tool, making sure that you have the charge you need for the job at hand, otherwise you may find yourself in a bit of a problem. And any energy-based weapon will be able to have its magazines recharged, which will certainly reshape the FPS weapon landscape, offering a new angle for energy-based weapons. Now, the work on Charge and Drain Tier 0 lasted 105 weeks, and it came to an end very early on in March, and likely being implemented in Squadron 42, if not already. So it shouldn't be too long till we start to see this roll out into the PU. Now this next feature is one that has been a long time coming, and as we have seen already implemented and receiving polish in the Squadron branch, it is EVA Tier 2, which is pretty much a full overhaul of the EVA system and how players will navigate in 0G. Now we also read recently in a monthly report that the EVA thrusters are receiving limited fuel, which will require us to make many more decisions when it comes to how we move around in a 0G environment. From using EVA jets, tractor beams, harking back to the charge drain battery capacity of the multi-tool, or as the next feature states, 0G push and pull, which is the process of our characters reaching out and physically pushing and pulling themselves through the environment itself. Now EVA Tier 2 had 99 weeks work that finished at the end of March, and I'm really hoping that this will mean somewhere like 320, so quarter 3, or for the end of year patch, we will see this system get into the PU, as right now EVA is seriously painful. So talking of 0G push and pull, this is the next feature which actually had 117 weeks work, so more than the EVA revamp system itself, and was also completed at the end of March. So both of those coming together and being completed are a good sign that it is not too far off. Now next up is a bit of a small deliverable for a big feature. It is the fire extinguisher, which as you can imagine will be required for use with the fire hazard system. And as we have heard, the fire hazard system is an all-encompassing system for how fire will start and propagate around an environment, affecting temperature, oxygen levels, and of course the condition of items within that environment. It does appear that CIG are trying to accurately simulate fire as much as possible and how we deal with that on board our ships, space stations, buildings, or even just in the wilderness. So having a fire extinguisher will certainly be very handy. Now, this extinguisher has been on the progress tracker for quite some time, and work on it began back in January of 22 and lasted 59 weeks, completing at the very beginning of March. So this next feature is going to be a bit of a beast and will be very important once Pyro comes along. It is jump points, which says building out the functionality, visual and audio effects for the jump points used to travel between systems and setting them up in-game, including necessary vehicle items and functionality, the jump points themselves, and their inner tunnels. Now, the work on jump points here had 108 weeks work that kicked off way back in February of 2021, with 6 different teams working on it, and should have completed in early March. So really hoping that the work on the jump points are now complete enough for when Pyro and server meshing is ready, so that we can finally experience what it's like to travel through them, which will be quite a moment. And I do wonder if CIG will tease the experience this year, maybe seeing it at CitizenCon again since they last showed off jump points. That would be very nice. Anyway, moving on, the next feature we have is a ship, and it is the MISC Hull C, which, as we are now aware, is set to release in Alpha 3.20 around the end of September, or more likely around CitizenCon, as that patch does generally drop around the 10th of October, announced at CitizenCon. Now, this vehicle has been on and off of the roadmap more times than I can count, and now with the cargo refactor and cargo expanding dramatically this year, it does appear it looks like it is staying there on the roadmap. It'll be very interesting to see how this impacts the burst in regards to cargo hauling and the economy, as I'm certain there will be some major changes to both from 3.20 onwards. And using the Hull C will be quite a feat, and I can't wait to see what it involves. Now, the MISC Hull C had 105 weeks work from 9 different teams that completed early March. So the next deliverable is one that was originally released in Alpha 3.10, it seems, called Ocean Shader Improvements. However, I'm assuming there was a lot more work they wanted to do, especially once they implemented and further developed the Gen 12 renderer. Now, this is making the oceans have more physically accurate refraction and reflection with energy conservation, unifying the feature set with other water shaders, and balancing performance between orbital and close-up situations. So it kind of speaks for itself, this one, basically improving the visuals of the oceans, and I do believe some of the work on this was implemented in 3.19 for all bodies of water, even down to small puddles. And this feature had 42 weeks work that also completed early March. Now, this next feature is one that I think will be pretty cool once it's all in and working. It is called Physicalized Weapon Handling and involves the character's hands reaching out and attaching or removing items on the FPS weapons or tools like sights, silencers, and everything else that they create or have created. Now, this is part of a long process of making the verse physical and tactile, with many more sprints coming down the line to show players' hands interacting with the game world in real time. And this particular deliverable for the weapons only had 7 weeks work, which began mid-February and was completed right at the end of March. Next, we have Player Interaction Experience Tier 1 Hints and Interactions, which has actually been quite the undertaking with 117 weeks work. That should now be done according to the progress tracker, and this feature states it is a holistic array of complementary features and systems, all related directly to the player, like player status, item status, environment status, as well as interactions with both the game world and the objects within it. Now, this is what we saw on the Squadron 42 partnered development stream, and can also be somewhat seen in areas for 3.19. As you can see, the interactions, the UI, they are a lot cleaner, a lot less cluttered, and it is just a series of improvements that will hopefully drastically improve the overall experience in general. Now, next up, we have Prone Tier 1, which we did hear recently utilizes some of the changes made to EVA Tier 2, and will just be a way of improving the overall prone animation and gameplay, which will be very much needed. So I'm happy to see that this is now complete and hopefully coming in soon, and after 27 weeks work, it should have completed right at the end of March, so here's hoping it gets implemented quickly. Now, moving on, we have the Quantum Travel Experience, which says updating the quantum travel mechanic to move players in a more physically realistic way and improving the general quantum travel experience, adjusting how spooling, calibrating, interdictions, and entering and exiting work. Now, I'm not entirely sure what we are going to see here in terms of changes, outside of maybe quantum spooling, as we have seen on the Squadron 42 stream, but making it more physically realistic does sound interesting, so here's hoping that it feels a lot more involving, a lot more of a bigger thing that your ship is really engaging in, and it isn't just going to be popping off everywhere every 2 seconds. Now, the next feature we have is called Space Mines, which were completed right at the beginning of March, and I'm expecting these are needed for Squadron 42 initially, maybe, as it only specifies it for the PU, but as many of you are aware, the Nautilus is the mine-laying concept ship that we are yet to see in-game, and will add another facet to the space combat arena. And I'm sure that eventually we will see many other ships form laying mines, and maybe even ground vehicles one day, but the space mines are now complete, and it does leave the door open for the Nautilus to make its way in. So the last couple of deliverables are Squadron 42 specific. The first one is Chapter 15, which says designing, implementing, and iterating on Chapter 15 of Squadron 42's single-player campaign. And as we know, CIG are keeping Squadron very close to their chests, so we have no idea what Chapter 15 involves. And then the final feature is called Save and Load, which I'm sure, as you can imagine, this feature will handle the creation of the save system across Squadron 42, including player data, checkpoints, and UI, but also storing and then loading dynamic entities like NPC positions and data associated with object containers. And I think we have just read recently that the NPCs on board the Idris that the player is stationed on can instantly snap into their appropriate routine and schedule depending on when the player returns from a mission. So getting everything working to allow us to save and load back in. Now, this completed mid-March, and I'm hoping it's a good sign that Squadron 42 is getting much closer to completion. So there you have it. Again, apologies for taking so long to get this video out, but there was quite a lot of very exciting features that came to an end in March, most of which will have a large impact on the PU. So now it's just a case of waiting for them to get polished and tuned in the Squadron branch, and then implemented into the persistent universe. But with that said, I do hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please do consider subscribing. I will be streaming on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays 2 or 5 BST time over at twitch.tv/supermacbrother. You're all more than welcome to hang out there. Great time to ask your questions about the project. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, does the channel a big favour. Tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.